you love entertainment, current events, and Hollywood, don't miss Creator to Creators, hosted by the filmmaker Meosha, known for the Shudder hit documentary Horror Noir and the acclaimed film Anatomy of an Anti-Hero, Redemption. This show features interviews with filmmakers and creatives from around the globe. Join the fun with guest celebrities and gain valuable insights. Subscribe now and follow Creator to
Hey guys,
Creators.
welcome to another episode of Creators to Creators today. Today we have a special guest. Special guest.
Hi guys, I'm Enoca Jones.
Welcome.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Absolutely. I love going back to the beginning. I always say the beginning charts our trajectory in life, our little habits we pick up along the way, follow us into our adulthood. Tell me a little bit about yourself. What was your childhood like growing up, and how did you kind of find your way into doing the things that you're doing now?
Yeah, my childhood, I grew up in the suburbs of New Jersey. So very quiet, I would say, but I was definitely always drawn to like the arts, more specifically the theater arts. My mom always likes to say like she put me in theater when I was 3. I think the play was like Hansel and Gretel at some camp. But ever since then, I kind of like fell in love with like performing arts and really kind of like dived head first into that. And just throughout my adolescence, from like elementary to middle to high school, I was very active in all of our like theater arts programs in our schools. And then as I got into high school, I started to attend Harlem School of the Arts, which was maybe like a 30-minute train ride from where I lived in New Jersey, and kind of started to get more professional training from Broadway directors and actors and kind of honed my craft. And
Nice.
from there, I just kind of kept going, applied to a lot of different art schools, but ultimately landed at Howard University.
Nice.
And I think at that point, I was kind of just figuring out, you know, what way I wanted to tell stories. I definitely fell in love with storytelling. And
Hmm.
at that point, I had, been to a lot of different plays and been in a lot of different plays and kind of studied acting a lot. And
Hmm.
I was kind of interested to kind of see the other elements or aspects or lenses that you can tell stories through. And so I got into writing while I was at Harlem School of the Arts. And, we were encouraged to like write monologues
Nice.
and things like that. And I think I really fell in love with that aspect and being kind of behind the scenes. And when I went to Howard, I found out that there was a television and film program, which I was at the time in journalism. And
Ah.
like, yeah, if you're a TV and film major, come over here. And I was like, well, I didn't even know that was a major. But I think I think I need to switch my focus. I do like to write, but I didn't think journalism would be the best use of my storytelling abilities. And so I kind of switched my major over to TV and film, and the rest kind of was history. I really fell in love with being able to, I guess, steer the ship in what stories were told. I felt like
Hmm.
you definitely can add your own spin and your own twist and flair to a character, but ultimately you're playing a character that someone else wrote and you're playing out their story. And so I wanted to
Yes.
tell my own story and kind of be the I guess the creator of a narrative that's unique. And yeah, so
I love
now
that. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, do you think that, like I love what you said about, you want to create your own stories and, do you think that when you look at cinema today, I guess Hollywood specifically, do you think that it's not really it's it's very narrow kind of lens that they they have certain like messages in these movies, and it's like it seems like it's super repetitive. It seems like the same thing. It's like regurgitated old kind of content, but like new kind of old, but it's just new actors and just the same kind of through line. Why do you think that Hollywood is so like not like an indie artist, right? Artists, people that are filmmakers, like the guy who did Obsession, and
Right.
these first time directors, who are getting these big budgets to make these films. They're more creative than Hollywood, which everybody want to strive for, but it's like it's not that creative these days.
Yeah.
Why
Um,
do you think that is?
well, actually, it's really interesting that you brought this up because this is something that we studied in the film program at Howard,
Mhm.
which is why because I did also get into NYU, and that was a big thing because, I had to really evaluate what would set me on the, best path as a Black artist and a Black storyteller. And I always say I love my HBCU. Howard owes me nothing, and I think they did a good job
Mhm.
setting as a Black content or as a Black creator overall. But
Mhm.
we did definitely study cinema, and I took
Mhm.
this course. It's called Film for Social Change.
Mhm.
And a lot of the foundation of Howard's film program was built on something called Third Cinema, which is film for social change. And there's three different types of film. Or three different types of cinema, I should say. There's First Cinema, which is like film for profit. So you have Hollywood, you have Bollywood, you have Nollywood, which are all of like the big kind of industry names that kind of produce all of this content around the world that is for
Mhm.
profit. You see in AMC and Regal Cinemas, and they just blockbuster films
Yeah.
essentially. Um, and then you have Second Cinema, which is more independent filmmaking, the Tribeca, the Sundance. These are spaces that are primarily dominated by like European white men, and it's usually just to tell like something that's alternative from blockbuster films, but it's definitely still a space that you have to have a lot of privilege to be in and to navigate as well.
Mhm.
And then you have Third Cinema, which is film for social change, which is quite the opposite of what First Cinema is. It's not for profit. It's actually, they don't even market it at all. It's
Mhm.
very specific to whatever the demographic is that's telling the story. And so we
Mhm.
looked at a lot of like things like what happened in Cuba with Fidel Castro and how he used
Yeah.
film to get his story out. And we just went kind of like all around the world to different third world countries that used it to kind of promote change. And we talked a lot about how film should not reflect your current reality. It shouldn't
Mm.
kind of reaffirm the ideologies that we're taught in like society and how we grow up, but it should challenge the way that you think and expand your perspective. And so that's kind of what Third Cinema is all about. And I ended up getting into this program. I don't think they have it anymore, but it was essentially like a gateway program to have Black artists funneled into Hollywood into entertainment,
Mhm.
and they had us working at Amazon Studios, and I worked in like the film acquisition team where we kind of like read scripts and acquired them and basically produced them to be like in-house films for Amazon Studios that they either purchased from writers or independent production companies. And that was kind of the work that we did. And I sat in on a lot of meetings with like film execs and just kind of got to see like the back end of it.
Mhm.
And essentially what it is that you have First Cinema, which is like Hollywood and all of these studios and entities that are looking to make a profit. They go to these other cinemas. They go to Second Cinema, they go to Third Cinema where people are actually creative and want to tell a story and tell something that's unique. And they basically pick out what's
Buy
doing well.
it.
Yeah, they basically just kind of like they're vultures and they take it
Yeah.
and then they turn it into something that is almost unrecognizable. It doesn't have the same essence of what made it unique. And a really good example of
Mm.
that is Moonlight. Moonlight was circulating around the independent film industry and it was doing really well. And they send scouts out. Like these studios will send scouts to like um local film festivals or independent film festivals to scout different artists, different writers, different directors, and basically poach their films and then purchase it and turn it into what they feel like is going to be a blockbuster. But they have all these check boxes, and once you check all those boxes, it's no longer recognizable, it's no longer
Yeah.
unique story. And they had us working on a project that was exactly this. It was this film called Emergency, and it's on
Hmm.
Amazon now, but it was a short film, and they found, somebody scouted it at one of these festivals, and they picked it up and they basically purchased it. They still let the writer direct some aspects of it, but they completely changed the story to fit like this narrative that they thought would be unique. And it was kind of like examining these black roommates, these black men that were roommates in college, and some drunk white girl ended up on their doorstep, and she was like completely incoherent. And they were all
Mm.
arguing about should they call the police, should they not call the police, and they were kind of examining like what it is to be a black man in America. Because one
Mm.
of them was like he was African American, like he was a first generation, his parents were from Africa, so he didn't fully understand the gravity of the situation. And his friend was African American, and he was like, black from the hood. He's like, we can't just call the police. We're
Yeah.
gonna it's like we're gonna die. And then they had like a Hispanic friend, and he kind of was just like, the comedic relief. But the short film kind of like communicated like that those like elements that were at play without really like
Hmm.
getting deep into it. And so I guess the idea was to kind of like make it into more of a feature film and fully examine it. And what I thought was so interesting is they changed the ending. So they let us see the director's cut, and then they showed us, of course, the final cut that went out. And ultimately what happens is like they go on this whole long adventure, and the African boy, he kind of realizes like, oh, I'm black, even though like I'm African, I'm black, and like being black in America means something
Hmm.
different than what my parents taught me or what I grew up knowing. And
Hmm.
he realized that because he has an encounter with the police, and they hold a gun up to his face, and he's like, oh wow, this is crazy. And it changes him. And his friend is kind of like, I tried to tell you, like I hate that it had to happen this way, but I tried to tell you. And then at the end, the director's cut was like the white girl, because she's unconscious the whole time, and they're just trying to figure out like what to do
What to
with
do?
her. And so she doesn't remember anything, and she comes back the next day after all of this happened, and like he had a near death experience. She comes back to the house, and she's like, "Oh, like I'm sorry, I made you this gift basket." And then the director's cut, he closes it, he slams the door in her face and basically tells her, like F you, like I'm right, and you don't even you think it's like a funny game, haha thing. Like, so he slams
Hmm.
the door in her face, which is like, I'm like, that's valid. Like, that's valid.
Hmm.
Like, you have so much white privilege, you don't even understand like how you've like completely changed this man's like whole life, and like you almost got him killed, and you don't even understand that because you have so much privilege that it's way you think a gift basket makes up for that.
For
So
everything,
then
yeah.
actual in the actual final cut, I guess that was too woke, too black, too whatever. They basically have it, he
Um,
invites her inside, and they eat the snacks in the gift basket, and they're all friends, and they have like a kumbaya moment, and she's
Interesting.
and so I'm like, those are the types of things. And I would meet with like the black execs there. There was only two of them
Hmm.
on that team, and they were literally there to vet all of the black scripts they had to make sure they weren't quote unquote problematic or racist. And that was like the
Wow.
only job. And I remember I met with there was one black woman, and I met with her, and I was talking to her about like how she felt about that and like what was her kind of ideology. And she told me like, well, yeah, I used to work for like Tyler Perry and Kevin Hart, and I there's like discourse, especially like at Howard's Film School, like if Tyler Perry
Hmm.
is like I guess like a story, like an inspirational story, or if that's kind of like a cautionary tale. And
Hmm.
I guess you can argue both, but I don't know, for me personally as a black woman, to be working for someone like Tyler Perry who perpetuates these narratives about black
Yeah.
people, especially women with Medea, for you to as a black woman to be a part of that. And she said, well, I didn't work on any of the Medea films. I don't know. To me, I just feel like, does it matter? And then
Yeah, you just, yeah.
she told me like, well, there's supply and demand, and if people didn't want it, then we wouldn't put it out. But like I said, when you go back to
Mm.
cinema, you're supposed to reflect the things that people should be considering, what people should be thinking. You should be challenging the way that people think. So if you're
Hmm.
saying there's supply and demand, that's kind of a cop out. That's kind of you
Yeah.
like absolving yourself of the part that you play in how people think about Black people, how people think about Black women. You're kind of trying to absolve yourself of that by saying, well, they're asking for it, so we're giving it to them. And so that's kind of what I saw when I was like in that, like coming from Howard's film school and like being put like smack dab in the middle of it and seeing like how they were doing stuff kind of like made me feel like, oh, okay, so like you guys don't care about telling stories. You guys don't care about changing the world through like storytelling or through like, creating stuff that, I don't know, like to me it just seemed like the craft wasn't the value, it was the profit, it was what comes after
Yeah.
that, what can you get from that. And so when you're doing it through that lens or for that purpose, you get stories that are redundant, you get stories that lackluster, you get stories that people don't care to see.
That's sad, honestly. Um, it's really sad because it's really disheartening to hear that because it feels like, I was talking to someone about this, and this is so important to talk about. I'm so glad you brought this up because I think it's something that a lot of people kind of steer clear away from this kind of topic, especially, and this is what I'd like to talk about. The bigger issue, I think that that how this is how the people in power stay in power, because people are we easily that bought, you know,
Yeah.
to go and be scouted out, and then like you said, to change your story. Don't get me wrong, if you want to go to Hollywood, do your thing, go do that, but. It's like, I kind of this whole narrative people say, well, you hear the trope, the every actor, especially even African Americans, when they get to a certain level, or minorities, of anybody, of any, they get up there and they get the award, and they're like, yeah, you have to break down those doors, and your dreams are valid. And it's like, no, guys, create your own table. Like, you don't have to empower Hollywood that's already empowered. It's
Yeah.
going to continue to be the same. It's that way for it's a reason. So if you want to create change, but I think a lot of people are just afraid of going against it because of, as we see, I was talking to somebody about like how many, there's so many great actors. Like, why haven't we seen a Will Smith or a Denzel or those kind of guys get together and create an Ocean 11 or something like that, or, you know what I'm saying? But you don't see that at all.
Right. I think too it's lack of resource.
Mm,
And part of that program that I was in at Amazon, they had a cohort of like film entertainment lawyers or people who were in school for film, like entertainment law, I should say. And I think that's a big part of it because a lot of those independent writers and directors they had come up with an idea that's like, like that emergency film, like that was a good concept. But what
hmm
happens is when you're negotiating with these studios, they kind of cut you out the deal and you
mm,
don't know better. This is your first deal. You're just trying to make it. And so some of it is like desperation, but some of it is just a lack of knowledge and a lack of resources. They can't afford an entertainment attorney, or they don't know that
yeah.
that's a thing. And so they don't have anyone in those rooms advocating for them. And even more, if you're saying, oh, I want to kind of like do my own thing on the side, that still requires resources, monies, investors to say, okay, F what Hollywood has going on, I'm gonna go do my own thing. You still need the Hollywood funds. So
Right.
you don't have that, then that's kind of also something that's an obstacle for a lot of people. And so to
Mhm.
your point, it's up to people like Will Smith or Jordan Peele or people who have the resources to help
Hmm.
to come back and say, hey, let me make a way for you as well.
Right. Very true. Your favorite Broadway musical is Wicked. What is it, what about it, about that story resonates with you?
Um, like I said before, like I'm a firm believer in like consuming media that kind of like bends your mind and challenges you to think about things differently. Like, hey, what if the world that you knew it or the way that you knew the world wasn't right? What if it wasn't
Hmm.
that at all? Like, what if it was something completely different? And I think Wicked does a really good job of that. Like, it
Hmm.
tells the story from a different perspective and changes your outlook on the outcome. And
Mm.
I like stories like that. I think another good one is the Joker movie that came out a few years back.
Oh.
And it
Hmm.
tells, like, we all know who the Joker is, like, but we always get the story from Batman's perspective. And so, like, seeing it flipped and being able to see from, okay, well, we were told that this individual was a villain, was a menace to society, and was up to no good. But what happens when that's not true? What happens when things are different or look different? And what I really like about Wicked too is I personally, from I think there's a lot of symbolism in the story,
Hmm.
and I think like her not liking her skin complexion and not thinking she's pretty, I definitely
Hmm.
think that corresponds and has a lot of overlap with how a lot of Black women and young Black girls feel as well.
Hmm.
And a lot of times as Black women, we are villainized and we are saw as at we are by society, we're looked at as scary or bad or mean or unattractive. And so I feel like flipping the script and like taking back her being able to take back her power and
Hmm.
peeling back the layers and seeing like her as a human being, I think is important. Like you should challenge the way you think about people or think about things just because society told you that that's the way that it is. And I
Yeah,
really like that as well about the story is that it challenges people to look at things differently, to ask questions, to challenge their beliefs, challenge their perspectives. And I like that. What if the people who you say are good are bad? Like what happens then?
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And it's crazy. I didn't really know anything about Wiccan until it came out. Like I always knew about, The Wizard of Oz, but I didn't know anything about Wicked until I saw it. I was like, oh my God, there's a whole, and that's what kind of got me more into Broadway and musicals, and
Oh yeah,
it
it's
it was
great.
cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, I lived maybe like 30 minutes outside of the city, so we went to see a lot of Broadway plays.
Hmm.
What I remember the most about that one is that it did have a lot of like, I don't know, it had a lot of like elements because of course it's like magic and stuff. So like she's flying and of course like most musicals they're not doing all that. But she's like, flying and all this. So it was very like fantastical, which I liked as well. But I definitely like the story and I like the way that they adapted it into the movie.
Hmm.
Um I just like it all around. Of course it's good writing, good music. So to me there's nothing not
Fantastic.
to like. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. You met Sandria, while working together in local government. How did that friendship develop?
Chandra is a very like social person, and I am too. And I think that's just the way, kind of how that happened. I sat next to her, and we have a lot of things in common. We're both foodies, and so like we just talked about food, and then of course we have a lot in common with film, and so we'd always like talk about movies we saw over the weekend and our favorite films and things like that. And so there is
Nice.
just a lot of like overlap. And so that's kind of like how that blossomed into more. And then of course I started helping her with the film festival and everything like that. And
Yeah,
that's kind of that on that, honestly.
I love that. As a member of the board of social media manager, what role do you play in helping the festival grow?
Yeah, I think it's definitely telling the story of what it is, the mission, the vision of the
Hmm.
actual festival and translating it into the digital space
Hmm.
for visibility so people because of course it's the same can be said when it comes to marketing
Hmm.
and kind of creating a marketing campaign and strategy is how are you telling your story? Where are you telling your story? Who are you telling it to? And I think that's kind of the role that I play because, Chandrea has an amazing vision and something that I think is much needed um, in Atlanta, in our film space. I don't think that there's a lot of room for people who focus on sci-fi, who focus on horror. And
Hmm.
so there's definitely a need, but it's how are you communicating that to people who are interested? And so that's kind of where I come in. It's just creating something that a plan that's more strategic and can meet our target audience more directly. And that's just that's the majority of it.
Yeah.
We've done a lot, we've grown a lot. I think when we started on Instagram, we had like 200, and now we're almost at 1,000 followers. Um,
Awesome.
so we're definitely growing. Slow and steady wins the race, but I'm hoping that
Absolutely.
um, we can just turn this into like, I mean, look, a nationwide thing, truly. But
I think so. I think it definitely has the potential to do that for sure. I was, I got to be there 2023. I was pretty involved when for the Women in Horror uh panel, and just seeing all the things that they put together and how many people came. I could see like this could actually grow and be one of those, big festivals like that people know about, that when they go to Atlanta, like it definitely has that, charm, and she has the heart that all the work she put into it is it's really good. It's incredible work.
I agree. I agree. And that's kind of like the work that I do. Over time, kind of like my passion for storytelling has definitely transmuted into more of like a digital space. Just
Mm.
given like the world we live in, like people are now telling stories like on TikTok and Reels, and everything is so much fast. And I'm sure you're familiar with Issa Rae's new series that she came out with on TikTok. And so it's
Yeah.
like how we're telling stories, how people are consuming media and content is definitely changing.
Hmm.
And kind of my passion has definitely shifted and pivoted with how film and the entertainment industry is moving. And I definitely don't want anybody to be left behind. And so that's kind of like what me and Chandra would talk about when we were at work, is just like, how do we get ahead, or how do we ride the wave? And I'd work with a lot of like small businesses and local businesses to help them, create a space for themselves and carve out a space in the digital world, where they can, still be able to have visibility and to get in touch and with their target audience and kind of elevate. But it's a dog eat dog world, so you
Yeah, I
definitely
mean,
have to come with a real plan.
yeah, because I do like the vertical space. I like that, everything is that. It's, and obviously it's adapting with the time, and everything is going to change. But I also feel like I wish and I hope these filmmakers have, rights, and so that they don't get their things, their stuff taken away, because like you said, it is a doggy dog world. And
Yeah,
whoever has the most money gets there first. It's kind of the
that's
game.
correct.
But how important is that, for filmmakers and creatives, in any part of the creative field, writers, directors, producers? How important is that to, you know, protect your assets,
Mhm.
when you are putting your work out there?
Yeah, definitely is super important, especially now with AI and things like that. It starts to become really dicey on like what is, I guess what's like fair game and what's not. And this is why I really try to advocate for more like representation when it comes to like Black entertainment lawyers in general, because
Hmm.
I think there needs to be a clear like line. I think there needs to be a line of demarcation of what is fair game and what's not, what's
Hmm.
somebody's intellectual property and what's something that just is a concept or an idea, because I feel like the lines are being blurred. And I think it's more important now than ever for um creators to kind of like solidify what is their idea and what's not their idea. Um Before it would just kind of be like, hey, I came up with this, I built my platform on this, it's mine,
Hmm.
and no one would kind of argue. But now it's kind of like, well, yeah, you did, but like you said, you don't have all the money, and so you were kind of on a small scale, so it doesn't count. Like I saw a video of these two creators. I think I want to say that their tag online is Jollof, Jollof and something. It's basically African woman and an Asian man, and they have some
Hmm.
sort of channel, and it's Jollof and something. Jollof and some Asian something. It's basically supposed to be a play on like them being African and Asian and them kind of
Hmm.
like, building their relationship and whatever type of content they make. And essentially some big corporation saw how well they were doing and created like a spin-off TV series. And they basically, they had all these millions of dollars and they basically stole their whole brand and created a show. And they
Oh
went online
no.
and they're like, we've been doing this for years. We've built this whole community and they didn't even reach out to us and ask like, and they just took it. It's
Yikes.
like technically you don't own that tag, Joloff and whatever, that you technically don't own that, but you built your whole platform on it, so it is
Hmm.
yours. And so it's like, how do how do you argue that, or where does the, because it's wrong, but
Yeah.
legally, is it legal? Like, you know what I mean? And so I
Yeah.
feel like it's really important now than ever when, you know, it's becoming like a vibe for new and creative ideas. And clearly these corporations don't care to like, kick your back in or,
Hmm.
kill your whole concept. And because you don't have the money or you don't have the visibility, you can't do anything about it. And so I think it's extremely important to think it's maybe like 25 bucks to copyright something, but like make sure you have everything patent sealed, signed, sealed, delivered, whatever you can do. Set some money aside or have a fund where you can make sure like that's yours. And I even talked to Chandra about that. Like the whole idea of Bloody Peach is something that
Hmm.
somebody can take if you don't lock it down and say
Yeah.
idea. So, and you don't think that because you might be like, well, we're small scale or we're this or we're
Yeah.
that. I think that's what those content creators thought. They're like, why would somebody steal like our
Yep.
tagline? Like, why would they come steal our username? Why would they steal these things? And it's like, you don't know who's watching. You don't know who
Hmm.
thinks that that's something that they can profit off of because they see that it's doing well for you and come and just
Hmm.
take it. And we don't have a lot of representation. We don't have clear rules and regulations around in this digital space what's somebody's intellectual property and what's not. And so
Hmm.
it becomes really dicey.
It really does. That's why I always say keep everything under your name.
Yeah,
At least you got your
but
name.
you have your nothing else, you have your name. And but it sucks because it's like some people want to like that idea of the Jollof, whatever, that's creative and that's funny and
Yeah.
that's what makes it unique and that's the appeal. And so it's like people want even the Bloody Peach, like that's the appeal is that it's fun
Hmm.
and it's creative and it's exciting. And so it's like now people have to dim their light because people are like, vultures, vultures
Ah,
prowling or whatever, so it
it
becomes like hard.
it really does. You got to you got to protect yourself. You protect your assets. Learn about copyrights, LLCs, all that stuff. Because as much as we love what we do, it is a business.
Correct. It's a
For
business,
sure.
and people don't play fair, and they honestly don't care about how you make a living, and they don't
At
care
all.
about that.
I've seen it all in this industry, and I've seen some really good people that were so close, and someone that they trusted, took it right, just took it from underneath them, and they are no longer even in the business because they. It's like holy crap, they gave up, and I'm just like, ah, that's rough. It's a rough business.
It is.
But on a happier note, I have a fun question that I like asking everyone on the show, and there is no wrong answer, I promise.
Okay.
Um, the three levels of influence: money, power, and respect. If you could choose only one of those things, which one would you choose and why?
I I think I would say respect. And the
Okay.
reason why is if you have respect, I think the money and the power come. If you have money, you don't always have respect, and you don't necessarily always have power. And the same
Mm,
thing with power. You don't necessarily always have respect. People just are like, well, you're powerful, so I'll just submit to whatever you're saying. But with those types of things, it's like you don't really have people who are loyal to you. You don't have people who see you as an individual and care about who you are as an individual. They care about what you can either do for them
Hmm.
or how much influence you have. And that those things are superficial. And I don't feel like you can actually build a true community or foundation off of that. Whereas if you have respect, the rest of the things can come from that, but at least you have people who are here because they want to be here.
Hmm. Hmm. I love that. Great answer. Great answer. What advice would you give to upcoming filmmakers, writers, producers, creatives, that are trying to get into this business?
I don't know if this counts as advice, but I definitely encourage every artist to read. Um, it's a book. It's called The Artist's Way, and I want to say the writer is Jessica Cameron. I want to say her last
Hmm.
name's, but the book is called The Artist's Way, and I think that that book has really like changed how I approach my art and how I approach any creative endeavor.
Hmm.
And honestly, it's really impacted the way that I live my life in general. It's a really great book. It just talks about like it's honestly a holistic approach to art. Like it talks about like your identity, your childhood, trauma, all these things that go into the things that you create and how to kind of yield those things to get the result that you want and addressing the things that we struggle with as artists, whether it's feeling like our art isn't good enough or having perfectionism that comes into play that stops us from being able to get to where we're going. And I think it's something that is important for every artist to read if they want
Hmm.
their art as amazing as they possibly can. So that would be my advice is to read that book
Nice.
and just get what you can from it because it will really change. I think it would change you as an artist, honestly.
Love that.
I did when I was at Howard, and every artist that I know that's out here doing big things has read it, and I think that's a testament to how amazing the book is. So that would be my advice.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. That's awesome. Where can people find you on social media to follow everything you have coming up?
All of my handles are ATB_she. That's where I'm at
Nice.
on social platforms. You can find me there. I'm about to start pushing out lots of great content, so definitely
Ooh,
out. Yes.
I'm excited.
Definitely check me out. This big things coming for sure.
Hey, let's go. Awesome. Well, congratulations. Everybody go follow her. I'll definitely be watching for sure. Um, and yeah, thank you so much for coming on. It was a pleasure. It was great talking to you.
Thank you for having me. I've enjoyed this so much. Thank you.
Same. And thank you all for listening. And always remember to live, love, laugh. We'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.